Well, we have been seeing a rise in various types of violent extremism and hate-fueled violence.
Continuing debate about the ways in which people are being radicalized online.
CNN is fake news.
According to research by the University of Maryland, more than 73% of the time, social media played a role in helping to radicalize people towards extremist ideologies in the U.S. in general. That's from a study from 2011 to 2016. Compare that to the previous 5 years, where the number was just over 26%.
Cameras captured in real time the arraignment of Donald Trump. Deep fake photos like these swirled around social media.
It's really important to note that we're in the most polarized times right now.
Using technology to create Holocaust denial memes, sharing racist content in memes or joke forms.
These ideas are now in the mainstream in a way that I don't think parents and adults really understand.
One of the things about the changing nature of radicalization is that sort of for an older generation, you used to have to be taken by the hand, taken out to kind of a backwoods militia or a Ku Klux Klan meeting, and you'd go through some initiation rites and sign on to a very defined and clear manifesto and to a group that had membership lists. And that was defined and understood and could be infiltrated and monitored or surveilled or broken up. And the plots from those groups were not that hard to disrupt, and they have been disrupted over time. But today, young people are exposed, really everybody is exposed, is the way I would describe it, to harmful online content at some point, whether it's in a chat feature, a comment thread underneath. You're running into anti-Semitic, anti-feminist, Islamophobic, racist content, misogynistic content all the time. And most people, thankfully, recognize and reject it. But every so often, somebody will encounter it, feel validated by it, feel like, oh, that makes sense. Follow a link that's embedded somewhere in that content to another chat room, to a more encrypted space, and go down kind of rabbit holes of disinformation.
If you want to find seminal white supremacist, anti-Semitic documents, you can find them now. It's very easy. You know, even when we started doing this work, the Great Replacement was like this thing that only people in really unmoderated, far extremist channels really were familiar with. And then Tucker Carlson just brought it to Fox News and was just like talking about it openly. Elon Musk just endorsed a tweet that was like explaining the Great Replacement.
As a survivor of terrorism and someone who came to a higher education institution following my involvement in the attack, one of the things that I noted was the lack of resources on the campus in which I was at.
As young people spend more time in virtual networks, parents and guardians are looking for ways to keep them safe. Cynthia Miller-Idriss is the director of research at American University's Polarization and Extremism Research Innovation Lab. The lab created a toolkit to help caregivers spot warning signs of radicalism.
I was interested in creating Peril because I had spent 15 years kind of coincidentally embedded in the German education system, doing dissertation research and then later research for another book, at a moment when Germany was making tremendous investments in prevention in a really upstream way. So they had had post-unification, a surge in anti-Semitism and white supremacist neo-Nazi violence that they met with billions of euros in investments. And I had accidentally become an expert on that while I was doing ethnographic research in schools, where some of the classrooms had some 80% of the youth with neo-Nazi insignia, shaved heads, bomber jackets, combat boots, etc. I got to see firsthand what it looks like when you invest that kind of money, when you have 9 or 12 agencies at the table, defend democracy, by equipping the mainstream with tools to reject the fringe, not just to defend with force. When I started paying attention more to what was happening in my own country, I never thought that area studies research that I was doing would become so relevant here. And when Charlottesville happened and I started getting asked to explain the phenomenon of youth radicalization, I was really disappointed to see that all of the interventions were really rooted in the security space, law enforcement and security approaches. And so a lot of what we do in Peril is to try to open up the conversation to other ways of imagining solutions that include education, that include families and communities, that include mental health, social workers, coaches, youth mentors, and others who are often at the table in other countries, but not here.
I manage a project called the Brick Toolkit, so the Building Resilient and Inclusive Communities of Knowledge Toolkit. It is a resource and an online web portal that allows higher educators, from administrators to faculty, staff, and students, to access resources and materials that help them build communities that focus on resilience, lack of hate, non-polarization, and helps to kind of create this connection in these polarized times that we're facing right now.
My job is to develop an evidence base for all of the interventions, resources, toolkits, guides, and studies that we do. I'm here to make sure that all of the studies we run are ethical, that they're well run, that we develop a sense of not just is our toolkit or guide or resource effective, but for whom is it effective?
And I'll never forget one parent who is sort of out of desperation asked this question that said sort of all of a sudden during the pandemic, her son had started expressing tremendously misogynistic statements and wouldn't even listen to her as an authority because she's a woman.
So I did a Zoom call with these parents and they talked to me about their son who was watching a bunch of Andrew Tate videos, and it's kind of the classic radicalization story. He comes across this like very hyper-masculine male supremacist YouTuber. He goes down that rabbit hole, and now he was like, you know, trying to go to Costa Rica and start a webcam business to exploit young women.
You know, by the time they get to that point and they're asking for help from just a regular professor, you know, I really, it's so desperate that it's a very sad situation. And I hope that what Peril can do is build ways for every adult in every community to know where to go, to get help, to get resources much earlier, so that people don't sit in those desperate moments.
I don't know what to do is like the through line for all of these emails and communications. And it is really nice. I feel really great about our building a library of resources to help people answer that question. What do I do?
So we've been studying 1,500 parents and caregivers for a year, collecting data at 0 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months. And one of the things we learned is that 11% of them, after just the first 3 months, said that they had either joined or created a group of other parents to talk about the online harms that their kids were experiencing or that kids in their lives were experiencing. 6% of them said that they'd actually used what they learned at the time of the intervention since then in the first 3 months to intervene directly with a young person who they now realized was exposed to radicalizing content.
As we're going into an election year in 2024, the access that folks will have to using the tool like the Brick Toolkit and some of the other resources that Peril offer online is going to be really key, from not only, you know, higher educators, but also parents and caregivers as they navigate these times.
I would say part of what you can do to help is, if you know young people, if you yourself are a young person, start having conversations about your media consumption, start having conversations about conspiracy theories, start having conversations about like what you encounter on the internet and then how that impacts how you think about the world. If you equip the entire community with this knowledge and these skills, that's really how you can prevent radicalization.